The mysterious neighbor.
Mary noticed that her new neighbor, Mr. Sullivan, was quite peculiar. He always kept his windows and doors tightly shut, rarely interacting with anyone in the neighborhood. One night, she saw a faint light flickering in his garden and decided to spy on him. Hidden behind her bushes, she watched as he dug a hole under the cover of darkness. As she crept closer, she heard soft whispers emanating from the hole, growing louder with every step. When she finally peered inside, she was horrified to see it filled with skulls, each one marked with strange symbols. Terrified, Mary tried to run away, but Mr. Sullivan suddenly appeared in front of her, his face twisted in an eerie smile. "Join the group," he said softly, his voice carrying a chilling undertone. He then confessed that he collected people's souls to protect his family from an old curse, one that had plagued his lineage for centuries. According to him, the curse required a constant supply of souls to prevent his loved ones from suffering a terrible fate. Mary's heart pounded in her chest as she listened to his chilling words. Desperate to put an end to this madness, she decided to report him to the police. However, when she returned with them the next morning, the hole and the skulls had disappeared. The garden looked untouched, and Mr. Sullivan greeted them with a benign smile. "You won't be able to prove anything," he whispered to Mary, his eyes glinting with malice. Confused and frustrated, Mary started to investigate the history of the house and the supposed curse. She discovered that Mr. Sullivan's ancestors had been involved in dark rituals, and several mysterious disappearances in the town had been linked to his family. The more she uncovered, the more she realized the depth of the sinister legacy she was up against. Determined to find concrete evidence, Mary decided to confront Mr. Sullivan again. She waited until nightfall and sneaked into his garden. As she approached the spot where the hole had been, she felt a sudden cold grip on her ankle. Looking down, she saw a skeletal hand emerging from the ground. Frozen with fear, she watched as the ground around her began to crack, and more hands started to surface, pulling her into the earth. Just as she was about to scream, Mr. Sullivan appeared. "I warned you," he said calmly. "You should have left well enough alone." With a flick of his wrist, the hands released her and sank back into the ground. He then explained that the curse was not just a family secret, but a binding pact with dark forces that ensured anyone who interfered would meet a gruesome end. Mary, now desperate and realizing the true danger she was in, tried to flee. But every attempt was thwarted by strange occurrences. Locked doors, phantom figures in her house, and chilling whispers that followed her everywhere. One night, she woke up to find herself in a dark underground chamber, surrounded by the skulls she had seen earlier. Mr. Sullivan stood over her, chanting in an ancient, forbidden language. In a final, desperate bid, Mary remembered a passage from her research about breaking the curse. She began to recite the counter-rituals she had memorized, her voice growing stronger despite Mr. Sullivan's attempts to silence her. The room shook violently, and the skulls began to glow. With a final, defiant shout, Mary completed the incantation. "In tenebris lucem invenio animae solutae liberantur, prohibeovos maledictae tenebrae hanc animam non accipietis, vinculis fractis, hoc maleficium in aeternum extinguatur." A blinding light enveloped the chamber, and when it faded, she found herself back in her own bed, gasping for breath. The whispers were gone, and the oppressive presence she had felt for weeks had lifted. She cautiously went to check Mr. Sullivan's house, only to find it empty and abandoned, as if no one had lived there for years. The curse was broken, but Mary would never forget the horror she had faced. She moved away soon after, hoping to leave the nightmares behind. Yet, every now and then, she would wake up in the middle of the night, hearing faint whispers in the dark, a reminder of the sinister neighbor who had once lived next door.